Hi, my name's Phil Gardner and welcome to Fun with Boxes. Well, today I take a look at yet another small box game because we do love them. And this one in particular. This is Strange World Above the Clouds. And this is a game designed by Florian Grenier. I believe that's how you pronounce the name there. It's from GRRRE Games and also Blackrock Games. And we picked this up in Essen last year, and wow, I'm really glad we did. This is a game for 1 to 4 players that will take around 15 minutes to play, so a nice quick little filler of a game with some really wonderful artwork. Now, I do believe the Hachette Games are releasing this later on this year, so hopefully this will be more widely available for people to pick up a copy. Well, what is this game actually all about? Well, you're going to be doing some very small light card drafting, and then you're going to be using the cards you've drafted to start to build up a tableau using the land cards that you've been drafting as you play the game. And once you've got a 4x4 grid laid out in front of you, then the game ends and you go into scoring. You are dreaming and floating in a sunny sky and you create a wonderful world. Suddenly the moon opens its deep dark eyes and weird creatures are appearing, making a scary rustling sound. "'Tis me, 'tis me, 'tis me." You are struggling to wake up. You open your eyes and you remain suspended in the dun 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 in the strange world above the clouds. Oh, be careful when you go to sleep tonight and watch out for that scary rustling sound of "'tis me, 'tis me, 'tis me." Doesn't really sound like rustling to me, but never mind. And you've got to watch out for these Tzimimes because they may devour your cards at the slightest mistake you make. Well, there you go. Strange World Above the Clouds. Let's have a Fun with Boxes look at what you get inside the game, and then we'll have a look at how to set up and how to play. Okay, let's take a look at the components for Strange World Above the Clouds. Now, the first thing you're going to want to do is to separate all the cards into their different types. The game comes with 4 player aid cards. There is a sun card that's got a direction arrow on it. You will find 4 cards that have this plain cloud back. And these are the starting land cards. You will also get 5 of these dark city cards. They're double-sided. They got values 9, 7, 5, 4 and 4. Then you will have a stack of fumarole cards. These are like the lava flow cards, and they're the same on both sides. You will also have a number of traveller cards, and they all have this back, and they will look like this on the front with arrows pointing. And then finally you will get the land cards, and these all have this image on the back of them, and these are the Tzimimes, who are going around for mysterious reasons eating up parts of your world. Now, what you will notice with these cards is that it'll have the player count number at the bottom left hand side. So you'll need, if you're playing a solo game, you will use all the cards with 1+. If you're playing a 2-player game, you'll use all the cards with 1+, plus then the 2+ cards. For 3, you'll add in the 3 cards, and for 4 players, you'll use all the cards. Okay, now let's set up the game. So firstly, give each player a reference card, and then shuffle up the 4 starting land cards, and then give each player a starting land card. And if there are any cards remaining, put these back into the box. Next we create the land deck, and these are all the cards with the Tzimimes on the back. And as I'm setting up a 2-player game, I've got all the 1+ and 2+ cards here, and you would simply give these a good old shuffle and set them up on the table in reach of all players. Next we will take the Dark City cards and place them in descending order. The 9 on top, then the 7, then the 5, and then the 2 4s. Next to that, place ephemeral cards, or lava cards as I like to call them. And then take your traveller cards and just simply place them in a stack. And then you determine randomly who's going to be the star player and give them the sun card. Now, the sun card is only used in a 3 or 4 player game. And the player with that card is going to choose the direction of the draft that we will be doing shortly. So they can choose which way the drafting will work. But because we're doing a 2-player game, we can ignore that for now. Finally, each player would place their starting land card face up in front of them to start to form their tableau. And during the game, players will be drafting cards and slowly building up a 4x4 tableau land area of cards before then finally scoring. Okay then, for each turn of the game, each player will be dealt 3 cards. You would then take a look at your cards and then choose 2 of them and pass them in the direction of the sun arrow, if playing with a 3 to 4 player game, onto the other player. So in a 2-player game, let's say I was going to keep that one, pass these to this player, and this player has passed me these 2 cards. So then I would take a look again. So we've both got 3 cards again, and finally we would do one further draft there where we would give 1 card to the other player. So again, all players will have 3 cards, but we have done a small draft. So you dealt 3 cards, you take a look at them, you give 2 of them away to the player next to you in the direction indicated by the arrow on the sun card. And now once again you have 3 cards, you then simultaneously give 1 card to the player next to you in the same direction as before. And again you now have back to a hand of 3 cards. And now 1 player at a time, starting with the player who has the sun card, then continuing on in the direction it indicates, you play a land card face up orthogonally adjacent to any cards already placed in front of you, while respecting the play restriction, and that is creating a 4x4 grid. But as you do this, you have to watch out for these pesky little Tzimimes, because they could be devouring parts of your land. And then the end of the turn will happen once each player has played their 3 land cards into their world. And if you've not completed your world, that is, you don't have a 4x4 grid in front of you, then play would continue on to the next turn, dealing 3 more cards to each player. And if you have completed your world, meaning that every player has a 4x4 square in front of them, the game ends and then you proceed to scoring. Now the game is very quick to play and quite straightforward once you've mastered the rules. So let's take a look at some of the key things you need to be aware of before you play your first game. Now, you may have seen the traveller cards during setup. Well, how do we get these? Well, when you assemble a dimensional portal in your world, you can immediately take a traveller from the ones available on the table. And then you can place it into your world where that portal was created, either on the left-hand side or right-hand side. So let's have a look. Let's see if we can create us a portal. Okay, so just as an example, if we had played this card and we have formed this here, this is opening up a portal for our travellers. And then what we would do is take any card we want from the deck of traveller cards, and I'll just take the one off the top. Then what you will need to do is decide whether to play it to the left or the right of the row where your portal is. And this is important because once you put a traveller on either side, it limits where your land can be built. So for example, if we were to place it on this side, then this would mean that we cannot put any future land cards past that point to the left. We'd have to continue to the right. So for example, we could extend like this on a future turn. So just as another example, if we'd placed it on the right hand side, this means we cannot build over here. This card is technically out of bounds and not part of your 4x4 grid. Instead, we would have to continue building in this direction. Whenever you play a traveller card, that is going to be worth 5 points at the end of the game. But it also has a potential bonus scoring depending on what is in the 2 rows next to where you place the card. And if you notice, we're not placing the traveller card exactly next to the card, we are placing it offset. And you'll notice that the artwork matches, and you'll see that the arrow is pointing to these 2 potential rows. And if you manage to obtain whatever this requirement is, then it'll give you additional bonus points. But we'll cover that a little bit later on. Like I say, any future travellers would have to be placed on the left hand side of the board, because this is where we have placed our first one. And in the rare situation where you'll welcome a traveller and the only spot available is already occupied by another traveller previously placed, you have the possibility to put the traveller in the same spot slightly aside. So let's say that we place our traveller card here. And the example in the rule book is something like this. If we played this card here and this card here, forming a portal, then what we can do is we can play our traveller card here. Okay, let's talk about the desolation of the Tzimimes, these pesky little land-eating creatures. Now, I have noticed that I've made a slight mistake. I've just set up these cards at random just to demonstrate, but when I was editing the video, I realised that these 2 cards could not be on the same row, and I'll cover why in a moment. But if you can just bear with me and just be aware that this card here shouldn't really be in the example. Whenever you place a card, you have to pause and check to see if the Tzimimes have done anything mischievous to your land. Now, one such thing would be that a card that has already been used to form a portal. You have to watch out for this. So, for example, if I wanted to play this card here, it's going to form a portal using a card that has already formed a portal. And you can't do that. The Tzimimes are very unhappy and they will munch it. So you have to flip the card over, and that's not going to be scoring you anything during the game. So keep an eye out for that. If you're going to form a portal in a row where you've already got a portal and you were using a card that was used to form the portal, you cannot do that. You would have to flip that over. So ideally you'd be looking to play this card somewhere else. Okay, let's take a look at another example. So when you're placing out the cards, the land cards with water on them, got to be careful with these, because if you place a water card next to an existing water card, again, you can't do this. The Tzimimes get quite excited and you would have to flip that card over. So if that card had been there and you wanted to play this card, then you're fine because the water is not adjacent. We have a look at the third way. Now you would do the same thing if you were playing a card with what these they're like little plant icons there. If you were to play a card with this matching icon in the same row as an existing card, then again you cannot do that. The Tzimimes get excited and they will eat that particular land. So similar to the water ones, however, if it's in the same row that you'd have to flip it over, or again you'd have to play it somewhere else. Let's take a look at the fourth and final example of when the Tzimimes will start eating your lands. Now, as soon as you play a card in a row above one of these cards, so if I placed the card here, you would immediately flip the involved card. So in this example, I would have to flip this card if I played a card above it. Now another example would be if you were to play one of these cards in any row other than your top row, then it immediately gets flipped over. Okay, next let's take a look at the volcanoes and eruptions. If you were to play a volcano, then you would have to place one of these, what I call lava cards, fumarole cards, onto a land adjacent to the volcano. So you would have to cover this up with some lava. Now it could be on a future turn, if I was to play this volcano here, then I would have to cover an adjacent land with lava. So I could cover this one here. And as soon as you have two adjacent to each other, that is when you take the topmost Dark City card. So I would take this Dark City card and form a Dark City over these two cards. And these lava cards cannot be used to form multiple cities. So once you've formed a city, you cannot use these cards to form another city. Now, one thing to be aware of, the desolation of the Tzimimes will happen before the creation of a portal or the effect of a volcano. So let's take a look at the end scoring then. Let's take a look at some scoring examples here. And the rulebook clearly details all the way you score for each of your cards. So this is just an example. Obviously the game hasn't ended because we do not have a 4x4 grid. But just to give you an example of how the points will work then. So first off, we would look at our ice icon cards and we would score points for the biggest group of adjacent cards that we have. So these three cards are adjacent, so at the moment these would be worth 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. This one isn't adjacent, so that is out of the equation. Now the water cards, they score quite differently, and these will score 1 point for each card that is adjacent to it, orthogonally adjacent. So these would score, so this card would score 1, 2, 3, 4 points. If this had been a Tzimimes card, that would score nothing. So in this example, this would be scoring 1, 2, 3 points at the moment. Next, we'll score points for our different animals in our world, and we will score 2 points for each different animal. And you can see the different animal icons here. So this would be 2, 4, 6 points in this example. And now for each of these symbols, they're like plant symbols, you would score 3 points. If you had a dark city or multiple dark cities, you would score the points for the dark cities. So now on to these strange looking, what look like dark moon cards. Now these work and score quite differently because they will score you 2 points for each icon on the card that is adjacent to it and below. And you will score 2 points for each occurrence of these icons in the column. So this is going to score 4 points, and there's another one of these icons here, so this would score 6 points. However, if you have a lava card below it, then you will score 0, or indeed if you have a Tzimimes card below it, you will score no points at all. And finally, you will score your Traveller card. Now, the Traveller card is always worth 5 points, plus a varied amount of points if the requirement listed is met. And the requirement is described by the card in the 2 indicated rows by the arrows printed on the Traveller card. So, in order to meet this requirement, I would need to satisfy it using cards in this row and this row. Now this particular one, if there are at least 3 what I call lava cards in either of these 2 rows, then we are going to score an additional 5 points. Now as you can see, we have no lava cards, so at the end of the game we would just simply score 5 points. However, let's have a look to see what it would be like if we did have some lava. So if, however, we had this arrangement, then we would gain 5 points, plus we have now 3 lava cards in these 2 rows. So we've met that requirement. So this card will now give us +5 points for a total of 10 points at the end of the game. And like I say, all the point scoring is clarified in the rulebook and also included on the handy little reference cards. And they will give you some nice reminders for the game as well. And there you have it. That's how you play a 2-player game of Strange World Above the Clouds. Well, Strange World Above the Clouds. What a fantastic little game. Absolutely superb. Really good fun to play and quite a challenge as well to play solo if you fancy playing solo, of course. We've mainly played this at 2-player and found it to be quite fantastic. So I got no reason to doubt that it won't be fine at all player counts. And I have given it a go solo as well, and it is quite an interesting little challenge. Everything about the game is great. The production values are great. The cards and the card artwork is fantastic. The rules booklet suffers a little bit with translation issues, I think. But on the whole, you've got your player aid references there and you've got your scoring conditions in the rules booklet. So you should be fine, especially if you've watched this video, of course. I love these quirky little games, and tableau builders seem to be quite in vogue at the moment. And this one is a very, very good example of a lovely little tableau building game that you can play in quarter an hour, and as such it's a fantastic filler game, one I would highly recommend you pick up. And so a massive big Fun with Boxes thumbs up for Strange World Above the Clouds. Well, I do hope you enjoyed taking a look at this with me. If you did, please consider hitting the old like button and also hitting that subscribe button too, if you would be so kind, because that would really help to grow the channel. And in the meantime, as always, please do take care and bye for now.